Kia ora, welcome back to Smart Talk, powered by Smartie, where we explore smart ideas for smarter business in the Cook Islands and around the Pacific. Today, we've actually got a very special guest, one that I'm super excited to have on the podcast with us. And we're joined by a true pioneer in the Cook Islands, who's been very much involved in the aviation and tourism industry. I've known this gentleman since obviously I was born, and grew up with his kids. So it's a true honor for myself as well to have you on the podcast. And so today, buckle up, pun intended, and we'll dive into it. So thank you for joining us in Smart Talk, Sir Ewan Smith. Pleasure to have you here. So Ewan, obviously, recently you've just been knighted, obviously a very big honor for yourself and something well deserved. I know all the Cook Islanders are very proud of you and what you've done for the Cook Islands. Maybe start off, just tell us a little bit about what that means for yourself, your family and everything.
Well, thank you, Brett, and good afternoon. Yes, being awarded a knighthood has been pretty overwhelming, really, for me, and in particular, all of the flattering comments that people have made. It's been very, as you said, it's been quite humbling. But it means a lot to me, and I respect it, and I think it also means that I probably should continue to concentrate on behaving well. It involves some expectations.
Yeah.
My family are very proud of it, and I think it's something that I share with Feeney, with my wife Feeney, because as I said to her, 42 years we've been married, and I said, you have followed me everywhere that I needed to go and wanted to do, and so that she deserves credit for that as well.
100%.
So, very, very humbled by it.
No, and I mean, as I said, well deserved. What you contributed for the Cook Islands is amazing. I think it's some 47 years you've been with Air Rarotonga, almost 50 years, which is no easy feat for anybody, especially in business. To be involved that long, but also to be contributing not just to the business itself, but to our country as a whole. So, personally myself, thank you, and I know from the rest of the Cook Islands, congratulations and well done. So maybe Ewan, if you can take us back. How did all this start for you? I know this is all sort of pioneered from Air Rarotonga back in the day. And maybe take us through the journey for yourself, because I believe you started at Cook Islands Airways and then pivoted off into starting up Air Rarotonga. And I think a little while after that, you guys acquired Cook Island Airways. So tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll probably go back a step earlier than that,
Sure.
Which was I began my aviation career in Rotorua in New Zealand, and did an aircraft engineering apprenticeship as well in Hamilton, but I learned to fly in Rotorua. There I went to Boys High. In fact, there's a couple of people here that I went to school with, Terry Hagan,
Okay.
and Rowan Strickland from Aitutaki, actually, were in my class at various times in Rotorua. But I learned to fly while I was still at school. And so aviation's always been a big thing for me. It's just been my whole life. Lived and breathed aviation sort of pretty much 24/7 since I was a little kid. So that gave me the entree to here, and the reason for that is that by the time I commenced commercial flying in Rotorua, I also had an aircraft engineer's license. So in 1973, when the airport opened here,
That was Des Eggleton who opened too, I believe, back then. Is that right?
Des was he was the civil engineer at the airport
Right.
during the construction phase.
Mm.
He was here. But 73, Air New Zealand bought a Britain Northern Islander, which is a 10-seater, 20-engine aeroplane, and positioned it here to maintain service to Aitutaki, because prior to that, there was a weekly 748 used to come from Samoa down here through Aitutaki and back, and obviously before that was the flying boat service, which went from the old coral route from
Yep.
Fiji through Samoa, Aitutaki, and on to Tahiti once or twice a week. So they wanted to maintain that link to Aitutaki, and bought that aircraft to commence service to Aitutaki, scheduled domestic service, coincidentally with the opening of the jet operations. So I arrived here in October 73, And I was employed, I was only 22 and relatively inexperienced, but I got here because of the dual licensing. Then I had one aeroplane, so if it broke down and needed attacking, we had some spare parts there, and I could repair it certified to fly back. Whereas if I didn't, if you didn't have an engineer's license, then you'd be stuck there at the charter ship to go and work to you. So that's how that was sort of serendipity for me, that I had spent the time doing an engineer's license as well as learning to fly. But at the same time, because there weren't many people around that were dual license at the time.
And at 22 years old too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool.
So, in fact, Brendan said to me one day, he said, something, he was talking to somebody, and he said, oh yeah, Dad, you came here when you were 22 years old. How does that make you feel now? And I said, it actually makes me realise I didn't know much.
Yeah.
Which he thought was a pretty good comeback. So we started out that way with Hook on Airways. It was obviously, there was New Zealand staff here, engineers as well as commercial staff. But it was a one-man band really,
right.
And that I was the only employee for a start for a couple of years.
Okay.
Supported by the New Zealand station staff here. And I operated Cook Island Airways for 4 years, and then sort of got the idea that I could start something myself.
26.
Yes. So the thing is that I'm very well paid at Cook Island Airways. So that 4 years there allowed me to save up money to
and living on Aitutaki,
to buy my first aeroplane, actually. And it's myself, Ian Rhodes, who was the station engineer for New Zealand here at the time. And we had to have a local partner, so that was Ross Hunter. So Ross and Barra were our original local partners.
Very cool.
And I bought this aeroplane out of the States, the Cessna 337, and it had an unusual configuration of an engine, the front engine at the back. But it was a very, very adept and agile little aircraft. It was very good. It's very reliable. You could carry anything you could fit in it, and it had good range. You could go up north, you could go we went all over the place in that little airplane.
How long did you have it?
We had that one for about 7 years altogether, 7 or 8 years. 1982, we bought a bigger aircraft, a Beechcraft Queen Air, and that was really to provide additional airlift to Aitutaki because Aki2 was being built, the hotel was being built. But it failed before it opened. It financially failed before it opened. And so we were sitting here stuck with a big mortgage, a new aeroplane, and not much to do. So
at 26, pretty scary getting into all that.
Yeah, it was. But I think, people have said that to me before, but I mean, as you know, when you're younger, you're braver.
Wiser or stupider, you don't know what
you don't know. So I didn't think it was just, I thought it was just exciting. So we did that. Now to save ourselves there, we had the good fortune to get involved with the movie that was filmed at Aitutaki called The Silent One.
Yep.
And I'd met Dave Gibson of the Gibson group when we were scouting locations and convinced him to go to Aitutaki. Anyway, as a result, they filmed that movie there. So that gave us a lifeline for a while. And we also started our day tour operation up there as well in order to use the new aircraft that we had.
And when you did it back then, the day tours, was that with the Lagoon Cruises or that was it? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And so we started that then. I might say that my first mates that I made when I first came here were Tango,
yep,
and Sean Willis, who were cadets in the control tower at the time, and we sort of hung around together and got into a lot of trouble. It was a real good fun part of life,
especially back in those days. Yeah.
Back in those days,
yeah.
So that's why we've been all associated together all on this whole journey really, and we still are with Tango with his boat building, and he built the 2 buckets that we have on the Lagoon and Aitutaki, and provides services to us. And of course, Sean has flown for the last 40 years,
right.
38 years with us. So at that point, we were still in competition with Cook Island Airways, and it was quite intense for around 12 or 13 years before we we did a deal actually with Air New Zealand at the time, which involved us buying Cook Island Airways out. And we ceased at that stage. We had encouraged Hawaiian Airlines to fly here in the 1980s. We were doing their ground handling, and we also operated a wet lease to and from Auckland with a DC-8 for about 3 years.
Okay.
So,
So you were doing domestic, but you also were doing the international leg as well.
Yes, we
Wow.
did. We didn't make any money, but
Yep.
it was a lot of fun. There's some things in aviation you don't make money.
Yeah.
In fact, quite a lot. So we did that, but in the end, it was not sustainable. So we did a deal with Air New Zealand, which involved them getting out of domestic aviation here, and we bought Cook Island Airways, and we got out of the international to Auckland.
Got
and
it.
Just set up our ground handling business that we do for the airlines other than New Zealand.
I mean, if you look back on that now, probably a great move that you guys did to, as you said, you probably weren't making any money out of the international sector, so it probably made sense for you to.
Yes, it did. It did. So as a result of which, we, then took over the hangar space and that sort of thing as well, and
Right.
moved, and expanded from there.
Very cool.
Um,
So, I mean, what a story to start with. You're 26, you come in, you start off, well, you started at 22, sorry.
Yes.
At 26, you dove into your first venture, which is an airline. Very scary for a lot of people. But as you said, you didn't know if it was a smart or silly idea. You just sort of, I guess, weren't afraid of it at the time. And then eventually got to the stage where you buy out Air New Zealand of Cook Island Airways is pretty amazing. But I mean, going along that journey, as we all, I know as Cook Islanders, there's one thing I always bring up and when I have discussions with people, and that's our cost of living here. And of course, you guys would be affected so much by fuel prices.
yeah.
How has that been a struggle, I guess, for you guys over the years with that? And then you've also got the staffing side of things. As you said, you were a one-man band back then, but now you've got, you're one of the largest employers in the Cook Islands at the moment. I think it's 95% of your staff are actually Cook Islanders themselves, which is not easy today. Everybody kind of complains about, we don't have enough locals here to employ. So how has that challenge been for you over the years between the fuel prices and your staffing and everything else that's kind of...
Well, I guess it's grown. It's a bit of an overused term, but it sort of grew organically, I suppose.
Right.
And then one opportunity followed the next. In terms of staff development, let me say this. I think as a company, we're probably technically smarter than we are commercially. We've always been a very technically based company. And it's myself and Munro, who's a partner in the company,
Yep.
who oversees flight operations, and essentially it's his stewardship of the flight operations area that's built such a strong reputation for safety and operational excellence, which is what you have. And it comes down to this: restaurants can't serve bad food, hotels can't have uncomfortable beds, and airlines can't crash. These are the basics of when you look at just a straight air service, that people want to get to where they're going on time with their bag and not be scared.
Right.
It's pretty much, if we do that, we pretty much got it done.
Yeah.
So focusing on the technical side of our operation has been a very big thing, big focus for both Munro and myself, because he is flight ops, myself with also with flight ops and engineering as well. And so you'll see us walking around every day, even now, 7 in the morning, walking around, touching everything that we do. And that's sort of been part of that secret, has been that. In terms of developing staff, because Sean and Tango were my mates when I first started here, I kind of thought, why can't these guys learn to fly? There's no reason why they couldn't. And when we started Airaro, Neville Pearson, who was a retired teacher here at the time, he bought a 172 and we taught him to fly it.
Okay.
So that gave us the ability to teach people to fly. So Sean started in that aeroplane. And from there, it just grew. And we found that Cook Islanders are very naturally talented in terms of handling skills, very, very good handling skills. You have to do a bit of work on the academic side of it sometimes, of aviation, but raw, good natural skills are really prevalent here with people. So we've found now, we've now got all local pilots. Most of our engineering staff are also local. Engineering's a bit harder. You don't find natural interest and talent in mechanical things here.
Right.
And I think that's possibly just historical, that there wasn't much going on way back. But I'll tell you, if you look at during COVID, most of the airlines in the South Pacific lost all their staff because they were expatriate staff.
Yep.
And they've struggled ever since to even get it back and operating. We lost one pilot in total during COVID.
Wow.
And we managed to retain all of that staff and get up and get running very, very quickly.
Well, probably helped that they couldn't go anywhere.
Well, possibly. But so it was really fortuitous for us that we've spent so much time over the last 30 or 40 years developing a very, very strong Cook Islands aviation workforce.
Yep. Well, very loyal. I mean, I think a lot of your staff have been there for a very long time too.
Yes, we've got a lot of 40-year plus,
Yep.
and a lot of 30-year plus.
I mean, that's unheard of.
yes, it is. But I think, you've got to just approach things the right way in order to get that loyalty.
I mean, what's the secret sauce in there for you guys? Because I mean, there's a lot that people could learn from that. As we saying, and we all know, we're losing our Cook Islanders overseas, and we're trying to maintain people here. And you and I kind of had a discussion before we got on the podcast just about all of that. What's sort of been the secret sauce for you guys to keep people excited, encouraged to stay? I mean, is it the wages you pay? Is it the environment you put them in?
It's all of those. You've got to create career pathways, and we did that obviously with pilots. We've done it with engineers, and we've got people at the moment. One boy down at NMIT completing his aircraft engineering certificate, New Zealand one. You've just got to keep at it, and provide these career pathways. Quite a lot of our pilots, if you look at people like James Herman and people like that, they started as ramp rats,
right.
from sport. So, and now he's a senior, flight examiner. So that's how you do it. Create those pathways. We're doing the same on the Lagoon and Lady now, and that is, progressing staff through STCWs if they're deckhands, through to New Zealand skippers tickets if they're actually operating the vessel.
That's very cool.
Same thing. We're about to engage staff in professional cooking as well, because they have a food operation on the boat.
Okay.
All that kind of thing. So create these pathways.
Yeah.
Obviously, access to staff airline travel is a big incentive, which we find
of course.
very popular with people here, because Cook Islanders love to travel. That's a big incentive. So it's money, but it's lifestyle.
Right.
People do have land here. Now you're seeing opportunities we've got quite a lot of our staff who've got side businesses or, an Airbnb or a side hustle of some sort.
Yep.
And we help them with that.
Yeah, that's
if
great.
we can, because that's part of retaining them.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest one you touched on the first point there, which I love myself personally, as you said, pathways, right? Because I look at the same thing with sports. And like you said, our Cook Islanders, they've got a lot of skill sets there, and especially from, I guess, in the sports aspect, and your son's obviously done very well in footy as well. So the hand-eye coordination, I believe, in Pacific Islanders is very talented. And we get a lot of them in sports. And I guess I'm getting into the point of pathways. I mean, I'm a tennis player myself. I see a lot of our juniors, once they're 15, 16, 17 years old, we lose them. They get motorbikes, they chase the boys, the girls, they lose what's next because there is no pathway laid out in front of them. I've been saying this for years to actually Sisnock and Cook Island Tennis as well, that we need to lay pathways in front of them so they can see that's where I can get to. So I guess what you're saying is you do that a lot with your staff, so they can see, look, if I stay on longer, this is where I can work towards.
Yes. That's the way. And I think the other part of it is that, people naturally tend to leave a small place to go to a bigger place, and they want to get that out of their system. So the idea there is to stay in touch and create good conditions for return.
Right.
Because, once they've gone and seen the bright lights and spent a few years away and then start having family and that sort of thing, coming back here is actually a very good option for a lot of people. And we have people that have done that. Gone away, had 4 or 5 years experience in New Zealand or Australia and then come back.
Yeah, and I mean, good opportunities. I think that's the big one that you're kind of touching on, and we kind of talked about that before too. And you know, I'm one of those, like with your kids too. We've been overseas, seen the big bright lights, the big concrete buildings, the opportunities that are out there. Love coming back now, and I think there are so many opportunities here.
Yeah.
I keep saying this to a lot of the people that I meet, especially the ones that I've grown up with that are still overseas. Try and encourage them, come back home. There is a lot you can do here.
Yeah.
I mean, could you touch on that yourself with, people that are watching that could be overseas, Cook Islanders that have seen it and want to come back?
Well, the opportunities now are actually unprecedented in my 50 years here, 52 years here.
Yep.
I'm looking at Aitutaki at the moment,
Yep.
which is never ever, you always say this place should really succeed commercially, but it never really got
Right.
going. All of a sudden it has.
Yep.
You can start to see things really moving now. So they hit the critical mass where banks will lend into there. People are maybe a little bit disillusioned with what's going on with their life in Australia and New Zealand, and so there are really good opportunities for them to return and get involved in a small business or do things. I mean, it's the ability, it's the entrepreneurial opportunities, even if they're small, even if it's just producing something on your own land and going and selling it on the side of the road.
Yep.
Those are the unique aspects of our community and our economy here, which is very, very appealing to a lot of people.
Yeah. And interesting point you make there too, because I mean, most people think Rarotonga, that's where it's all happening. But now it's expanding out.
Yeah.
Aitutaki, Archu, next. I mean, it can keep going from there.
Well, it's tourism that's driving that, and tourism that underpins our operation. Commercially, our whole operation is underpinned and financed by tourism.
Yep.
And it's with that we're able to extend to operating the essential services that we do everywhere else.
Right.
There are quite big obstacles to that kind of commercial development on some islands because of land tenure, that kind of thing. But Aitutaki is a great example at the moment of new opportunities for people to return and get involved.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, we talked about COVID, you're talking about tourism. And I thought one of the best things, as weird as that sounds, that came out of COVID was we were kind of forced to look at, all right, how can we pivot a little bit, and diversify is always the word everybody uses. So it was big talk. And I feel like now we've come out of that, and now I think we're about to hit records this year of 190,000 tourists.
Yes.
It's all sort of just focused back on the tourism sector. I mean, what's your view on the pivotal point of it, or not so much pivotal, but diversifying? I mean, what the opportunities?
I mean, what are you going to do? We're not going to diversify into forestry or
no, yeah, right, absolutely.
Dairy farming, or so a lot of that stuff is just consultant speak.
Yep.
About diversification. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yep.
We're a one-trick pony. We've got a tourism industry, but it's a good one. The other thing about it is that it's shown its durability. In 9/11, the GFC, and now COVID. I mean, it got up and running very, very quickly afterwards.
Yeah.
One of the things is as soon as people have been cooped up for a while, they want to travel.
Yep.
They've come back and it's slightly different. What we are seeing is people more interested in genuine experiences rather than just leisure. It's got to be leisurely.
Agreed.
But, we're finding go back to, say, 2007, when we first started getting involved with the Tahiti and our JV across there, they would fly to the Marquesas about 3 times a week. It's a long way. It's 3.5 hours and an ATR out there.
Right.
It's further than the normal group is from here. Today, they're out there twice a day, and it's tourism that's doing that.
Yeah.
It's because travellers from Europe are looking at that and saying they're wanting to explore the last unexplored parts of the world.
Right. And I mean, yeah, interesting point. I like how you said that too. It's sort of like, all right, don't beat around the bush. Yes, tourism is our backbone. We all know that. I mean, it's probably 95% of our backbone. When I talk about diversification, I think a lot of the stuff too for me is, I guess where I want to go with it. I always tell the story. If you go down to the market, Mama's sort of there selling her Kiko brooms, and the blinders are sort of up in a way that it's just, I have to sell to the tourists that are here, right? Rather than how can I actually sell internationally?
Sure.
So I don't know if you see any open market there.
I mean, obviously, technology's changed a lot of that access to those things. But that said, I think that you'll find that there's actually quite a degree of contentment among the people that sell things on the side of the road. I've gone down on the side of the road myself.
Yeah.
My wife's selling pineapples, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting just to see how people behave.
Yep.
See how visitors really enjoy the interaction with local people, and the sense of security that those local vendors have, knowing that they can go out and earn some money if they want to, and when they got enough, they go home.
Yep.
You also learn other things too, like you're sitting there selling sweet corn cobs for $1 each, and every now and again you'd sell 2 or 3.
Yep.
If you cook it, you can sell it for $3,
Yep.
and it's gone in half an hour. So you just learn stuff like that. But one of the areas that we're very, very focused on in tourism and in our destination development program, in fact, is ensuring that you keep those entry barriers as low as possible for local people to get engaged in the industry and become active in the industry. Because at the moment it's unique. I mean, you can't just sort of plonk down on the side of the road in Auckland and start selling stuff. But here you can.
Yeah.
For a start, it's your own land, their own land, and that they're producing things on. And it's their roadside. So
don't have to pay rent.
Well, it's it's a unique thing. My mother-in-law, I mean, she's 83 and she doesn't.
Yeah.
So how good's that?
Yeah. Well, no, and I agree. I mean, like you said, my mum's 81 now, and she's still. You should see her garden. I mean, it's unbelievable what she's grown in there, and she still gets people coming in and asking her to buy stuff all the time. So, no, I mean, 100% agree with that. And there's, as you're talking about, you can be on the side of the road. You see a lot of people with their pop-up food vendors with barbecues, and they sell out. They do great. I mean, I know one of the mamas. I think she just goes down to the market. She makes her $800 on a Saturday, and that's her for the week.
Yeah, I know. No, it's pretty good. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And I think competitively, I've just been in Tahiti again last week, and I was in Fiji a while ago, just been to Honiara and that sort of thing. Our street food's right up there. It's very good. It's very good. So it's become a feature of our industry here, and a point of difference with our competitors, competing Pacific Island countries.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been on the tourism board for, I mean, was it early 2012 or something?
2010. I
2010.
rejoined the board. I had been on it earlier on for a couple of years, back in the late early 2000s.
Yep.
But I rejoined the board in 2010, and I've been chair since 2011, 2012, something like that.
So how would you rate now where we are as a destination? Because I always like to kind of look at, you've got French Polynesia, Tahiti, as everybody refers to it. They're kind of seen as that high destination.
Yes.
In my personal view, over the years, I feel like the quality there has kind of dropped off.
Yes.
And I think for us, we haven't been recognized as that, but I'd love to see us starting to go in that direction. I mean, what's your view?
I think the key to the success of our tourism industry that is predominantly locally owned.
Yep.
Whether it was a good accident of history or whatever, but it was probably a good idea. It was a good job that the Sheraton failed early, because that was going to really change the whole composition and
The landscape of everything,
of
sure.
our tourism industry. As a result of that, you've seen it's slower. However, it's predominantly locally owned initiatives and investment. And so that in itself creates a broad level of contentment with our population and their acceptance of tourism.
Right.
If you go to Fiji and Tahiti, which are effectively, in some ways they're competing destinations, we don't compete with the high end.
Yeah.
But if you can have a look at that, those are foreign-owned hotels with predominantly a lot of foreign labour and a marginalised local population. In French Polynesia, they have fee simple land. And so basically people in the Leeward Islands, if they've sold their land for hotel development, they'll never get it back.
You're right.
And if they've been less than wise with the money that they received and it's gone 10 years later, they're living in very poor conditions in the city. We don't have that. And I think it's a very, very, in fact, I had a friend from Tahiti over here during Christmas, and he'd never been here before. And he runs a substantial business over there. And he said, what we've got here is almost the inverse of what they have.
Right.
And I think we probably arrived there partly by accident, but it's a sweet spot.
When you say the inverse, do you mean we're not sort of that high end?
We're not, yeah, it's all of those things. I mean, this is how you can explain also why we struggle with long haul air access. So they have a lot of 5-star premium resorts.
Yep.
They're built on tax incentives, so that when the incentives run out, the hotel closes. So it's something like 30 or 40%
Yep.
of hotels over there are closed, because it's the tax incentives, the defiscalisation scheme that drives the whole thing.
Right.
But what the people that do when they fly down there, they travel in the premium seats. And so if you can sell your 100 premium seats on your aircraft at a high airfare, which
Yep.
is what they do, that pays for the flight. So therefore your economy class is just a bit of a top up, and you can sell it at a rate that people can afford rather than what it costs.
Right.
So, I mean, there's this sort of thing on a long haul flight. You've got to say 60% or 70% of the people on the aircraft have bought their ticket for below cost. The whole flight is financed and paid for and made profitable by the people in the premium end. We don't get that,
Yep.
because we don't have we have very little inventory here that is of that class.
Right.
So therefore, when the LA flight was operating within New Zealand, very hard to get much high yield traffic because we don't have the premium thing to go with it. However, the downside of that is that if you're going to build hotel rooms at $500,000 each, or $1 million each, which they are over there, they reckon, you are relying on big, retirement funds and equity partners and all the rest of it from overseas and foreign ownership, and that brings with it sort of a whole different set of circumstances.
Yep. And yeah, no, and I mean, very good and interesting point there, because also, if we go back to what I said earlier, that we're looking to be at probably records this year of, is that right? It's about 190,000 tourists.
We're getting up there, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, are we getting towards full capacity?
Well, I think the elephant in the room is where's the cap?
Right.
And that's certainly a discussion we're having in tourism climate. Where's the cap here? Where's the cap in Aitutaki?
Yep.
Because once people start to feel that this is being driven out of their control, that they're overwhelmed in their own country, they're going to start pushing back on it.
Yep.
And we don't want to be, I mean, you've seen scenes in Europe this summer, actually.
Yep.
People out there picketing, saying, tourists go home. I mean, you're really going to screw the pooch if you get to that stage.
Yeah.
So I believe we will reach capacity. Where that is, I mean, within Raro, you have something like 4,500 to 5,000 visitors here in peak season at any one time, against the local population that's double that.
Yep.
And that's probably pretty much as far as you want to go.
Yeah.
So the way to grow from there is obviously to improve the range and quality of services.
Yep.
Get people to stay a bit longer, maybe, but increase the yield. Get them to more high yielding activities.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, that's where I was kind of going with it. I mean, as you know, I'm building the first 5-star resort here. Huge risk, obviously, I'm taking, as you're touching on some of those important points. But where I do kind of see us hopefully heading towards is that, yes, we need to get that yield up, number one. But it's not just on the accommodation side, it's the experiences. I think that's a very big part that we're still missing. Right. And as we talk about, I think there's a big opportunity here for locals to either come back or ones here to start looking at that, because they're all sort of, I mean, as we always say, we're copycat central, right? So if somebody's flipping burgers over there, I'm going to go and flip burgers outside my house too. But rather than saying, you know what, why don't I make a 5-stack burger instead, something that's just over the top. And
you tried that too, didn't you?
Yeah. I did, actually. Yeah. Told myself I'll never go back in the restaurant business. And here I am putting in 3 restaurants. But yeah, I guess the point is, looking at the high yield, the higher customer experience, I think it also is falling down on our Airbnb market, or as we say, Airbnb market, I should say, because I think it plays one way and the other, because we are trying to develop our tourism, and a lot of people see that we're actually booming. So a lot of people are converting their houses into B&Bs, which then therefore is producing less houses for people to rent. Good luck trying to find a house to rent at the moment that's under $450. It's all extremely high and it's extremely difficult. So I do see that it's sort of.
My own view is that I think I would not like us to see. I would not like to see us moving to any kind of restriction of the Airbnb market.
I agree.
Yep. Because the point is this: is that for local people that have got land, Banks have got
Pay it
money.
off. Yep.
There is now an opportunity to go and build homes as investment properties.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, on the cost of money and that kind of thing, and the cost of construction, rents have got to go up. Yeah, we have to pay people more so they can afford it. That's really, I think that'll balance itself out a little bit. Because there is definitely now an investment opportunity for local people that was never there before.
Yeah, I agree there. And I guess I try and look at it as how, if we're trying to encourage our locals, especially to come back and say there's opportunities here, but good luck trying to find somewhere to stay. I think it kind of touches on the point. There's another opportunity there, right?
There is. I think as far as enticing people to come back, that's harder. What we should be doing at the moment is making sure that we create these employment pathways for kids leaving school. I mean, there's 150, 200 kids leave school each year. We should be case managing every single one of them.
It's not a lot.
We don't. It's not a lot.
No.
And when, I go and talk to educational statistics and stuff, you just get sort of data and you turn around and say, hey, there's no reason why somebody or a couple of people cannot actually sit in person, monitor each one of these people.
Agreed.
And figure out, figure some things out. Because it's very important also for our tourism industry and product as well. In Aitutaki, for example, we not only employ locals, we only employ locals from Aitutaki in our operation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the reason for that is that our visitors, our guests that go over there on the day trip or go out on the bucket cruise, they want to interact with the genuine article. They want to talk to Aitutakians about, and it's interesting when you talk to staff and say, what do they ask you? And they said, they're just really interested to know how we live, and we always lived here, and what do we do? And it may seem obvious to us, but a person from Europe driving down the road in Aitutaki seeing an old man on a tractor doesn't realise that it's his tractor and his land.
Yeah, right.
So it's that kind of
his
thing.
road.
And well, yes, but they're delighted with that.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel, as I said, if compared to going into a flash resort somewhere in a country where just over the fence people are living in poverty, and travellers are actually uneasy with that.
Yeah.
So that's where we've got to be. The focus this year in tourism is on stewardship, and that stewardship is across everything. It's in all the environmental, physical, and social factors.
Yeah, because we've been talking about that here at Smartie for a while too. It's where I could see the government could probably do better is creating in probably groups that are run by the private sector that can help set pathways for people coming in here to say, hey, if you have a fishing boat, well, if you go out and fish at nighttime for maruru, why not do a private maruru fishing tour? Yeah. I haven't seen anybody do that yet. I mean, it's small stuff like that, but there's, as you said too, we kind of have to educate and steer, I guess, some of our people in the right direction.
Yeah, you do. One of my staff the other day made the observation, said, you know what, all of the people that are at the core of our activity at the moment actually started working for us when they left school.
Yeah. And
that's something that we don't pay enough attention to.
Yeah.
We don't have, I did an apprenticeship when I was my aircraft engineering, in the days when there was apprenticeship. And then some bright spark came along and reorganised the New Zealand economy, and they scrapped that. Now you can't get a plumber for love nor money down there.
Even locally.
So there's some things like that we really should just pause for a moment and think about. We've got the bones of it here with the Tertiary Training Institute. It needs more money. It needs more scale. It needs more tutors, and it needs to be, as I said, out there basically case managing pretty much every kid that's going to leave school in the next year.
Yeah, I agree. We kind of look at that too, as in, we've built a kids app, for example, because we actually believe that financial literacy is lacking quite a lot in our in our educational system, and it's not hard. No. Why haven't they got people in there to focus on that? Because again, if we're based on tourism, it's about generating things, business, revenue. People are not being taught well enough, early enough on how to grind it and earn $1, how to save it, and then how to reinvest.
And why not to go to higher purchase?
Yeah, well, exactly. Buy now, pay later.
Compound.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching a Warren Buffett interview, and they talked to him. I mean, obviously, he lives in a very different economy from our own, but they said, what's the cornerstone of your whole sort of career? He says compound interest.
Yeah.
And he said,
I think I've seen that one,
People-
actually. Yeah.
yeah, people that are paying it don't realise how they're being ripped off,
Yep.
and the people that are earning it don't realise how easy this
Yeah.
is. So
The Matrix.
I know. So it's a matter of and we find that at work. We get kids in there, and we start off trying to get some financial literacy going. The other one's cooking. My boys, when they got to leaving school and going planning or whatever, first thing I did was bought them a casserole, and then took them down a countdown at sort of sale time on Friday night. Said, right, here's a turnip, here's some carrots, here's this. Now you're going to make food that'll keep you warmed up after footy for the next week. And that's the thing. I mean, we make jokes with our staff down the amount of money they spend on the food truck.
Oh, God. And cigarettes.
Every day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So those are the things. But as I said, I think that really we don't have anything like the investment we need nationally in tertiary education and trade training. Nowhere near it. The idea that somebody can finish secondary school, they're a long way away from having marketable skills. And you've got to, just as apprenticeships and things did back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, created that pathway, because remember how it would work is that you'd be placed with an employer on an agreed course of training, and the government would pay part of their wages, because they're getting discounted learning, aren't they?
Yeah.
And we don't have that. And I think that's something we could really do.
Yeah, and I mean, with technology today, I mean, it should be easier, right?
Yes.
We should be able to bring in all these tools online, help bring people up.
Yes.
Are you guys yourselves with Air Rarotonga and I guess with tourism as well? I mean, are they sort of looking at the tech side of things and how we can actually utilize this more?
Yeah, they do. I know tourism, there's a digital team down there, and so they do a lot of work in the webinars, all that kind of thing.
Yep.
But certainly at Irara, I mean, we're an ASPEC examination venue, which is the New Zealand Qualifications Authority for Aviation.
Right.
So you can sit any aviation exam here.
Cool.
And our staff do for flying and for engineering.
Because you guys train people to fly as well, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we get involved certainly in the ab initio stage.
Yep.
When they become more advanced, getting up to commercial training and instrument rating, they'll go away for that.
Yep.
We've had some that have used the New Zealand Student Loan Scheme, and something that you can use and say, well, come back and we'll pay that off for you over a period of time, or there's various ways of crafting solutions for kids, leaving school. As I said, that 4 or 5 years they need to obtain marketable skills.
Right.
Again, if you look at the public sector, I mean, where that fails is that they invest in scholarships and things for people to go away and return to the public service and then pay them nothing, or very little, and so that just doesn't work.
Right.
You can't get something back and then just pay them peanuts.
Well, how do you think then? Because obviously, I mean, we're 30 or 40% of our private sector is actually employed by the government, right?
Of our workforce.
The workforce, yes.
Half, probably.
Yeah, oh, Jesus, up that high. And I mean, that's probably part of the problem.
Yes. It needs to be rebalanced.
Yep.
It needs to be rebalanced. It's just sort of growing and growing and growing. The productive sector, which is in the private sector, basically, the bulk of the productive sector. I know there's health and education services and various other things that government does produce, but there's quite a lot of dead weight economic loss in there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everyone kind of talks about it and how frustrated you are when you go into certain departments and things are slow. And I think we talked about that before, where you could probably bring in some really bright minds and they could change things real quickly in a lot of the departments.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of make work schemes in there too.
Yep.
Mine was just endless workshops and make work schemes, which when you actually get to the end of it and say, what does this produce?
Right.
It's a value in the economy. Quite a lot of it doesn't.
So, I mean, if we all think it, why do you think the government's not doing it?
Well, now we're going to get into a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But,
Sorry, I'm opening that can of worms.
but I talk to a lot of younger people, and say, I think you need to get involved in the system, in the political system. I think you need to get involved at a community level. I mean, effectively, the quality of government comes down to the elected representatives that we send to Parliament. So if you want to improve that, you need to get involved with the grassroots, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, you come from, a years of wealth of knowledge, and that's why I'm opening this can of worms, because I mean you've seen it over the years, and the governments in the good times and the bad, and in between.
Right.
I mean, overall, probably today, where do you see us sitting in history from where you've come from?
Well, I've probably just seen it go through the same cycle pretty much.
Right. How many times?
Well, a number of times now, but yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty hard too, from a government standpoint, in that people have become so dependent on, effectively a welfare system that can't find its way to better things.
Yeah.
And if you want to get elected, you have to basically just keep handing out more. Well,
Right.
that's pretty difficult. It's quite a difficult situation to be in, because if you're going to, and it's the same. I mean, New Zealand government's got the same problem.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of things they really need to be doing. And I mean, look at how they're being, the current government down is getting there, trying to make some of the big decisions which actually need to be made, and they're quite hard.
Yep.
And there's a riot. Well, the reality is it's because people don't understand the arithmetic.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't carry on printing money
Yep.
and expecting things to get better, and that's why that's got to the point that it has.
Yeah.
And I think we're like that. I mean, we've got a government that, or a public sector that is financed by just continual growth in tourism and the taxes that it generates.
Right.
But you get to a point where it gets to an unsustainable size.
Yeah. And
And we actually need those people in the private sector.
yeah, but it is interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, it's very easy for people to point the finger at the government,
Yes.
but yet we're also part of the problem, I guess.
Well,
and,
that's right.
yeah.
I mean, the public's got what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
What
Well, we voted for them,
for.
so yeah, exactly.
So you can't just lay it all at the feet of the government. You've got to say, well, it has to be sort of a bit of a shift of thinking. But as I said, you take New Zealand at the moment, is that the social side of economics in New Zealand almost outweighs everything else, to where it's, how are you going to tip it back in the right direction?
Right.
It's going to be quite hard.
Yeah.
And I think we have that to an extent here.
Yeah.
That said, one of the things that I've always loved about living here and being part of the Cook Islands community is just how strong and sensible people are. We had, while the kids were doing secondary schooling in New Zealand, we had an apartment in Auckland for about 15 years, and we never even knew the neighbours. Whereas here, you're part of a very strong and friendly and wonderful community.
Yeah.
We went through some pretty hard times losing two of our kids.
Yep.
And it was really the strength of this community. And when it came down to, it's the people that made the difference to us.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Support that really gave us.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, you went through an unbelievably heavy loss for you guys, and you've come out on this end, and you guys are still doing strong. Your kids are doing well, and we talked about education with our kids and trying to bring them up. Technology, I think it can kind of segue that a little bit into the tech side. Well, we talk about with government too, but that's another can of worms that I really don't want to open up, with what kind of tech that they're using that could be enhanced. But coming back to like the opportunities that we're trying to encourage our locals to develop with, and in your mind, what would be one of probably the most prominent or exciting ones that people should start looking at in the tourism sector, I guess?
Sorry, now I'm not sure that I've really followed that question well. So you
if you were to talk to our Cook Islanders today that are overseas and say you should come home,
okay. Well, I think it's this. That we have a significant cohort of semi-skilled and unskilled migrant workers here. And
Yep.
It sounds fine if people say, well, I can't get locals to do this work, they don't want to do it. And I can see that, a lot of kids don't necessarily want to do just that sort of basic labour.
Yep.
And basically, the problem is that we're not offering them the pathway to the middle management skills that
Yep.
we are short of.
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. So you say, well, all right, that's all very well that somebody's running around with a rake cleaning up the rubbish, and that is a migrant worker, because nobody will do it. But if you walk into the office and say, well, where are all the Cook Islanders here that are, they're qualified in finance
Right.
or law or whatever, who are running this thing, and they're not there either.
Yep.
So, and I think that's what we've got to address.
Yeah, I mean, good point, because a lot of them that leave are saying that they're not earning enough, or there's not enough opportunities. I actually think there are a lot of opportunities, probably more so in the business sector of things, but as in the workforce, obviously you've done well, as we said, over the years. You're 95% locally employed. A lot of people struggle with that. But if someone were to come back and start up a business, how would you sort of advise them how they can go about?
I think again, we need to, as a policy, you need to really sort of address this at a national policy level, because it's all about a competition for resources, right? And at the moment, as I said, we've just talked about the size of the budget that government has at its disposal. And if you said, well, some of that could be turned into incentivising some of these things, because that's what will make a difference. There's no doubt that people will respond to incentives. And if an employer in the private sector was incentivised to offer positions to cook islanders in Australia and New Zealand, in professional positions and stuff like that, and there was some incentives to do that, you'd find people doing it.
Actually, that's a brilliant idea, because I have foreign workers myself on the resort side, and all of them naturally, as soon as they get their pay, they go down to Western Union, they send their money back overseas. It's not staying here, it's not circulating in the economy. And you're talking about incentives with governments. I mean, maybe that's where government should be looking at it and saying, well, if you are employing locals, there is a tax incentive of some sort there, maybe for that local. So whereas you would pay a foreigner, which today, if you had to bring in a great accountant from overseas, you're paying an arm and a leg. Why can't we do that with our locals, but maybe incentivize them?
Yeah, well, I think you can incentivize things, you can disincentivize other things.
True.
But but then I think that comes then down to the fact that we, as in the private sector here, we don't have strong enough advocacy for the private sector. And again, I'd encourage all younger people like you to get involved. I mean, Chamber of Commerce is the organisation that is there, but it needs all of you people involved in it. It needs some people in there full-time bring policy formulation together. And if and doing some really, really good quality policy work, which you can then go and present to the government and say, look, this is a good idea, this is what we want to do. But at the moment, we're really we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're just leaving it to government ministries and that. Well, they're not going to come up with those ideas because they don't have any experience of that, of the environment that we work in.
Yeah, and I think you said that too. You're encouraging some of our locals to get into the government aspect of things. I've been given the same too. Obviously, for me at the moment, far too busy, but I do plan to eventually do that. How much of that does, if you look at the Chamber of Commerce, how much of that is actually helping government in your mind? Because I know you've been on the board of
I have, and I don't think it's doing much at the moment. It's nowhere near enough local engagement. I think that still the self-employed. I mean, you just look at it this way: our private sector is probably principally made up of self-employed individuals or small businesses, local businesses. And I think they look at the Chamber of Commerce and think that's a Papa Eye outfit that they don't belong there. But in fact, that's what it needs to be. It needs to be representative of those people, and it needs to have, as I said, good quality policy formulation, so that it should have policy positions that it advocates to government all the time. And we should be talking about tax. We should be talking about labour laws. We should be talking about. Otherwise, you just get imposed something that is just arrives because nobody actually took any notice and made any submissions.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd love to refer to DOGE, so the Department of Government Efficiency. God, I can't even say the word. But I think we could do with something very similar here. And, and to look at, okay, where is the government spending? But where we get frustrated a lot ourselves is we see all of these consultants that come in, and so much money has been spent on this stuff for a report that sits on the shelf, collects dust, and nothing happens, and all that money has left our country. And then you go and you look at it, it's China first, it's USA first. I think we should be starting to implement those sort of things where if we want to encourage our smart locals, especially to start with, come back and hopefully start generating stuff, why aren't we incentivizing those guys through these initiative with governments to say, okay, well, we need engineers, we need
Well, I
consultants,
think
etc.
that goes back to, foreign aid always comes with strings attached. And the first thing is that they've got their own roster of approved consultants.
Right.
And I mean, I've seen it on a number of occasions that I sort of feel that our whole country and certainly our government is a victim of consultant capture. Things that we deal with where we said, well, you have to do it this way. Well, our consultant said so. And you turn around and say, well,
What do they know? Yeah.
And that's it. It's consultant capture, and so there's far too much money spent on them.
Yep.
But unfortunately, it often comes as a condition of a particular grant or an aid project. In which case, I think that some of these things should be sent back. Just say, sorry, we don't want that.
Yeah, agree.
Because it's not going. All it's going to do is take up a lot of time, make work, and actually just get everyone's way.
Yeah, because I don't know how many consultants have come into us at Smartie and sort of said, "Hey, we want to get your views on the payment systems and so on and so forth." And we've given them all this info and all these reports, and nothing comes out of it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, not only have we wasted that money on those consultants, we've wasted our time too contributing to all this. And it was kind of like, well, you know what? Someone local could have just done all of this.
Well, I mean, make no mistake, we're always going to probably have to bring certain specialised skills in and knowledge and whether they're called consultants or not.
Right.
Doesn't matter. I mean, there's always going to be some people that we need to do those things. But I think just blindly accepting programs on the basis that somebody's going to come in and tell you how to do it is not necessarily achieving the quality or ensuring the quality of output that we want.
Yeah.
Or that it's even relevant.
I mean, even if they started off with saying, we could have that consultant from overseas, but also having a local one and matching off the reports to see what that looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, might be a good start.
Yeah. Well, it would be, but I think that, as I said, that a lot of these reports too are an end in themselves.
Yep.
So we've completed that report, so we've done
You're
that.
done,
Let's move on to the next one. Rather than actually saying, well, what was that for? What's it produced? And is there now sort of an enduring benefit from that?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then throw it out.
Well,
You know?
and I'm going to give you the perfect example of one is, I was in one of the government departments, like I won't name names, but I was sitting there with an individual and he sort of asked what we were doing at Smartie and I explained it to him and he said, you need to do this. I said, yes, we've already done that. You need to do that. We've already done that. And he said, oh, well, this all sounds really interesting. I need to send you my report that we've done on the infrastructure in the Cook Islands, and it's fantastic. I had some from New Zealand do it for me. It's wonderful. You're going to enjoy it. Well, we read it. We were featured in it. He had no idea. I mean, it just goes to show you, they're talking all of this up, bringing in consultants, and not even reading their own reports.
Right.
It's kind of scary when you look at it that way.
Well, it just becomes wasteful activity.
Yeah, of course.
Unproductive activity.
Yeah.
And I mean, you raised the point, payment gateways are an issue for everybody at the moment because of the rising complexity of anti-money laundering legislation in New Zealand, Australia. We've had to deal with this issue ourselves of what you could do 20 years ago with a payment gateway, which is there, been there historically, and all of a sudden you get a letter from Westpac or DSP or something, was it DPS in New Zealand saying, oh, sorry, you don't comply anymore. And that is the problem. That is a problem. Still a problem today.
Yeah, well, and I know the government's been talking about that here too, that I believe the remittance banks are now looking at potentially cutting us off, but not just us, but several of the Pacific Islands, because it's just not worthwhile for them. Right. The cost of the anti-money laundering side of it, the regulations, the policies.
Reputational risk too for them.
Yeah, right.
They look at it and say it's just not worth the risk. And I think we face that type of thing, this problem of scale. I mean, we see it with the aviation industry, that even New Zealand and Australia are struggling to maintain a competent regulator because the joke is that if you're in the industry, you say, well, no, nobody that's any good would want to work for the regulator. And so as a result, all the competence and the skill and experiences in the industry rather than with the regulator. And so they really struggle. The second part of it, in the case of, say, New Zealand CAA, is that they're in Wellington because that's where the minister is and nobody wants to go and move to Wellington. So we've got a guy that comes up with contracts to us up here when we've got heavy maintenance on. It's fun, we know him really well, really competent engineer. He said, oh, I'm going to join CAA. And we said, what? You've gone to the dark side. 6 months later, he said, no, I'm out of here. This is terrible. This really sucks.
Yep.
And that's the problem they've got. So if you then take it down to our scale here, we've got to hang off the edges or off the coattails of a bigger jurisdiction in order to remain competent and compliant.
Right.
There's no way you're going to invent all your own maritime regulations and aviation regulations and have all of the oversight that you need when you've only got 500 airplanes and 500 vessels. You need to use somebody else's jurisdiction. So it's the same thing with the finance area and banks.
Well, are you saying that they should start looking at that and maybe going through from New Zealand?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it does make a lot of sense because...
I mean, we were there before. When I first came here, you could write out a National Bank retirement check in Auckland to buy some drinks.
Oh, really?
You could. Because they just ran it as an account, just sort of a rural account on National Bank in New Zealand. But the reality is I think we're going to have to end up back there.
Yeah.
We're going to have to attach ourselves to somebody's fiscal system. Because, again, you're not going to create a financial gateways and the payment gateways and all of the ability to transact internationally here that's competent on the scale that we have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's obviously what we're doing at Smartie is because the restrictions and the limits that we have with the gateways is the biggest one. I mean, the example I always give is, I built one of the first e-commerce websites back in 2008 for Turtles Teas.
Right.
And it was PayPal back then. And he had to have a business registered and a bank account in New Zealand.
Right.
Fast forward 17 years to today, it's still the same. Right. Nothing's changed.
Yes, I know. I mean, as I said, we worked through that, those difficulties, and we have one. That's how we've done it. But even then, they're still a bit leery of that. They said, well, we'll continue to accept the businesses that you've had here historically, but we won't do any new ones. So, I don't know. I think we're all going around with the same headache at the moment over payment gateways.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we've had some breakthrough just recently. So we are actually in the process of building out our own one that's going to be on Smartie. So we're hoping that's going to be a big game changer for it. Right. Because, going back to Mama at the market that I said who's selling a Kiko brooms or hats, right now the tourists can't go up and pay with a card. There's just no way for it. But we're actually about to have a soft POS set up come through soon so that she can just pull out her phone, tap and pay, and away she goes. So... yeah, we're trying to work with the tech side of it versus more on the bank side because it's the way to do it. But then having those relationships with the banks in New Zealand so that the financing is actually going through there, but we don't burden them with the headache on this end. And it's kind of going with what you're saying. We kind of have to go back to that. I
think we do.
As kind of what we're doing, actually. We're kind of jumping to that and then not passing... I guess the burden on to the local merchants when they receive the payment on Smartie. It's in their phone. They can go out and start shopping immediately with it. So yeah, it's such a huge challenge, and I do think it's a big restriction too for a lot of the businesses here to expand. I mean, even on the accommodation sector, I was for yourselves as well, but the ones running their B&Bs, they can't really set up a website. There's nowhere to set up payments through their website. It's either send me your bank details. Or deposit online through to this bank account. And it's kind of sad. We're in 2025.
Well, but as I said, it's not just finance. I think education's the same. I mean, obviously, you've got your local, the Cook Islands curriculum component. But if you're going to have people that have got marketable skills that are internationally and regionally competitive, we have to tack on to external education providers and curriculums. And it's New Zealand or Australia, probably. So it's the same issue.
Yeah, I agree. And, we're our son, for example, we started a tutor online for him who's not here, who's overseas. So again, I guess it's...
my granddaughter online taking, she's doing that New Zealand one. So.
But I don't know if the education department is looking at that more with...
well, they could be, because that's what we have to do. I mean, the thing is this, and it's interesting, you can't do everything online. You need in-person tutoring. You've got to be able to see, feel, hear, and taste whatever it is that you're doing, as well as, and I found that. I started a law degree some years ago, which I wish I'd done a lot earlier, but I found it was really, really difficult just learning just online.
Yeah, right.
And how I cracked it in the end was I found it was like a podcast, but it was podcast actually, on law, and so you could actually read it do it online, and then hear it. And you've got to have this sort of multi-sensory experience of learning things in order to retain the knowledge or build your knowledge. And so that's the thing. I mean, I would see us saying in future having a substantial part of our curriculum, which is not developed fast because we're too small, but delivered and assisted by a competent in-person.
Agreed. Yeah. And on the educational side, that is 100%.
I mean, that's how we're doing our aviation stuff. We've got all the online resources there. You've still got to have somebody that can show you how to do it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. I mean, I always go through stuff with some of our, people learning to fly and that type of thing, just physics concepts and stuff. I mean, I remember really carefully just simple demonstrations of things like the gas launch, because you did it in a classroom and blew a balloon up and tied it and put it in the fridge and watched it shrink and asked the obvious questions about what's happened to the gas inside. You've got to do all of those sorts of things in order to retain knowledge rather than just looking at a screen.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess the two big sectors a lot of people always are sort of pointing the finger, I guess you could say, at the government is education and health.
Well, it is. I mean, and it is, because if you look at it, I mean, I've got Francis is in New Zealand at the moment. I'd far rather he was here.
Right.
He's down there because of his kid's secondary education.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, we have other staff here doing the same thing. Key, experienced, skilled, commanding staff who've said, well, I'm going to have to go to Auckland for 3 years, 4 years to get my kids through school. So there's that part. And then, of course, at the other end of your career, when you start to get ill, you need more sophisticated medical services. So those are the two areas that, to my mind, I think require a transformational approach. And the only way you can do that is a transformational approach to the budget and the prioritisation of the budget.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think both of those, education needs $10 million more if it's going to move forward and retain a skilled teaching workforce.
Yep.
Health probably needs about the same.
And it's not a lot of money.
It's not a lot.
I mean, they should be able to pull that together.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the health, not just obviously, as you said, with the education in person, naturally, 100% with health especially, but there are sort of those, what you can move into with the technological side of it, with actually having doctors overseas that you can actually have interviews with. And, I go back to 2010, I built a website for a doctor friend of mine in Chicago, and it was ER2U. So it was essentially back then, 15 years ago in America, they were already doing it, where you could log in on your smartphone and just have a one-on-one consultation.
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, now, particularly with things like Starlink and that available in the outer islands and good bandwidth, there's just no reason why we aren't using online services a lot more.
They would benefit the most too, especially the outer islands, unable to get on a plane easily to, not saying that they can't, but it takes time, so if they can quickly get on a phone and talk to a house specialist, even if it was somebody here, I don't know why they don't start with that. Booking an appointment, 10 o'clock, I have a one-on-one with Dr. ABC and start there.
But again, I think we all work with retail IT.
Yep.
So that as soon as Starlink became available, we all got our Starlink dishes.
Yep.
It'll be, if you go through all the machinations that we've got to go through within government to transition to a platform like this takes years. Whereas in fact, in the private sector, we do it straight away.
Yeah.
And they basically be a lot more flexible and energetic around this because these things are moving so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think back, you go back again to 50 years of Era,
right?
And how amazed we were when we got our first teletype machine, sitting in the corner of the office, clattering away, got our first booking on it. Said, "This is amazing."
Yeah.
Then we had fax machines and and all that kind of stuff, and
the dial-up.
I mean, GPS. I mean, we used to fly up north with nothing. And
really?
Yeah, you just clock and compass, and
Jesus.
You go all the way up there. A low power beacon at the other end. So just stuff like that, which is just amazing. I mean, now a friend of mine was just here the other day demonstrating he's got one of those automatic lawnmowers. Put an antenna up, and this thing's accurate to within sort of that much.
Wow.
Just running around the lawn. Sensors, got a rain sensor, so as soon as it detects rain, it rushes back to the garage, and goes back and charges up. I mean, that's just the navigational accuracy and that kind of, it's just incredible.
Yeah. And a lawnmower.
Oh,
and with a GPS.
yes. So we need to make use of all those things because there are a lot of them that would make a lot of sense for us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just came back from Paris at Viva Tech 25, and funny you talked about the lawnmowers because that's what made me think about it. One of the guys that was in our Pacific Tech group actually had a solar-powered lawnmower.
Right.
Very clever idea. So the idea for them was actually more so, which actually probably would work great at the airport.
Right.
Literally put it out there in the sun. It's still kind of charging. I don't know how much charge it would give to do the whole runway, but at least it could just tick away.
Yeah.
On its own. But
so there's things like that. So which I mean segues into the discussion about what's going to happen with aircraft. What do we think will be flying in Toronto? I mean, one of the things for sure is that that the only way to go to travel between islands is for people is by air. What shape will that take? Well, at the moment, I think we're probably one or two technological steps away from seeing any kind of viability in alternative energy. Yep. There's a lot of excitement around drones, and there's a lot of excitement around, some first sort of stage electric aircraft. The problem is we don't have batteries that can store the density energy that we need for an aircraft. Right. You can for a car, but it's not having to support itself in the air as well. And so that's the issue. And you see these new electric airplanes aircraft that coming out next year. But
and stuff.
Yeah, but they're good for 150 miles,
exactly.
and then you got to stop for 4 hours and charge it up.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not we're not there yet. Yeah. So I think we're going to be burning fuel for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then talking about fuel, I mean, Christ, we kind of touched on that before. I brought up the question, but I don't know if we really talked about much about that.
Fuel price at the moment is actually remarkably stable, and it has been for a while. I mean, it was very cheap during a couple of years ago, but that was sort of an aberration. It's returned more to about where it's naturally priced. The bigger challenge for us at the moment is actually spares. It's the cost of spares. What happened was during aircraft spares. What happened during COVID is that a lot of companies went broke. A lot of people left the industry because they were just about due to retire. Right. There was no new people trained, and so all of a sudden, there's this bootstrap effect. All of a sudden, utilisation went right back up to pre-COVID levels, and there's only half the production out there. That's created scarcity, and that's just dumped the price. I mean, we're not talking about 10 and 20 and 30% increases. We're talking about 1, 2, and 300% increases in some of that spares. So if you take a component recently that we had to change on a Saab, we would normally have exchanged one for about $75,000 US. We got a quote from Honeywell for 330. We managed to get one on the end of 180. I mean, these are huge increases, and we're seeing it across the board. Right now, spare engines. I mean, engines are a big challenge for airlines around the world at the moment because Pratt's got a problem with theirs. Yep. Rolls-Royce got a problem with the Trents and the 787s, and as a result, there is none of those available. You just cannot buy one for love of money. And we, even with our aircraft, PD6s are okay for the Bandits, but the Saab CT7s, right now I would say worldwide there's probably none available for Saab.
Kind of scary.
Well, it's we're quite well provisioned in that we have spares, and we have a spare, and we're on the General Electric manufacturer's program. But even then, you used to send an engine in for a shop visit or a heavy visit, maintenance visit, and it would be turnaround time would be about 45 days. Now it's 120. And that's just so. Therefore, because it's 120, you need additional spares. Everybody does, so they've all rushed out to buy them, and the price is double. Right. So
well, and you guys, AirRara, I think for a few years you've actually won awards for your safety levels.
Yes.
And this is all part of it. Obviously, you must have a fantastic setup with spare parts.
Well, we do now, but we've had to double up on it since COVID. We've had to we've probably doubled our spares inventory, and the reason for that is there's two problems. One is that the turnaround time is long. Yep. I mean, recently we do windscreens on every now and again because they're de-iced and got heating elements in them. Okay. And you would normally be able to get a windscreen in 3 to 4 weeks out of the US. Last year it was 9 months. So instead of buying one, you buy 4. the second part of it is some of the component overhaul facilities, their reliability that they've got was not as good as it used to be. So we're finding more and more things dead out of the box, when you buy them. So again, if you used to have to have 2, now you need 4 or 5 on the shelf.
Yeah, and I mean, geez, where you come since 22 years old, so now almost 50 years with Air Rarotonga, where I imagine you're not planning to go anywhere soon.
No.
What do you see in the next 10 years with the airline and our country as a whole in tourism? Obviously, you've been an amazing backbone to all that. So,
well, it's going to come down to, as we discussed before, touched on it before, which is developing more unique tourism experiences and travel experiences for people. And again, for the last 50 years, we talk about dispersal of visitors to other islands, and it's not really happened. Some of the factors that need to change are that we can get them there, but you've got to have somewhere to sleep. Right. And if you're going to do that, you need power, sanitation, waste disposal, water, and you need access to finance. So those are the things that challenge other islands, and those are areas that we are trying to work on in tourism at the moment through destination development. At least get a gap analysis of saying, all right, somebody wants to go to Artu or Kiara or Molku somewhere and set up a boutique guest house or bespoke guest house or something. How do they do that? What are the obstacles? Well, at the moment, they're significant obstacles we've got to try and do something about, because we know we've got customers. We know we have customers. Despite people that are pessimistic about because of the distance that it is to the Northern Group, I think that the Northern Group will come into its own in that 10 years. We know that there are people who will pay the price of having a unique experience like that, just as I referred to the Marquesas before. Same sort of thing.
And I guess you look at French Polynesia, saying, in order to get to Bora Bora, I believe you have to fly to Tahiti first anyway.
Yes.
Because that's the international terminal. And then they turn around and fly back out to Bora Bora. So, and saying that people are prepared to do it there, why can't they do it here?
Yeah, well, exactly. So, I'm in my own. I'm very optimistic about our visitor industry and the quality of it. And if you look at it today and then compare it 10 years ago and 20 years ago, it's made a lot of progress. There's a lot more people in it now, and there's a lot of new entrants in it as well. Local people getting involved in tourism. So it's something that comes naturally. Service doesn't, but hospitality does, and I think that's it's a thing. You say, what are our assets and our qualities? And it's Cook Island's culture. Cook Island's culture is hospitality is very important, and it comes naturally. Service doesn't.
Do you see anywhere in the next 10 years possibly Aitutaki becoming an international airport?
Could be, but I'm not sure that you're going to get. If you're going to do that, you need 1,000 hotel rooms.
Right.
That's 4 times what's there now, 4 or 5 times, and I'm not sure that the 2,000 people in Aitutaki are really ready for that kind of saturation of tourism. So, no. Okay. It's just there.
So probably,
but what I could see though is I could see, we're quite optimistic about the development of Tahiti as the hub. Over which we get to access to the Northern Hemisphere. And I could see possibly running an ATR or something between Tahiti and Aitutaki.
Yeah, because you guys only started off with 1 flight. Now you're up to 4 a week.
Starting this week's 4. Yeah, so 2 ATRs and 2 sub flights a week. So I could see 1 or 2 of those going direct to Aitutaki, because what we do see is that European traveller coming down through French Polynesia, they all go to Aitutaki. They want to go there. That's what they want to do. Yep. So taking them there direct, at least on one of the legs, would be an option.
Yeah, I'm hearing.
I think as opposed to, say, Auckland or something, because again, I don't think it's the New Zealand market. If you go and talk to hotels in Aitutaki today, they'll tell you that probably half or more than half of their guests are from Australia, and that's popular with Australians, and they've got the kind of spending power for that. The New Zealand market's a bit more economical than that, and so then that in turn tells you where your flights regionally might operate from. I think from Tahiti potentially.
cool. Yeah, because I know of at least two people that have told me they've come from Australia and just flown straight on to us.
Oh, we see them every morning off those Jetstar flights. We'll see 15, 20 people queue up straight off that every morning and go to Otaki. As we do, though, from the wide body in New Zealand in the afternoon. Yeah. We see quite a lot of people going through on our code share. But no, Otataki's really come to its own.
Lastly, do you see probably more airlines potentially looking at us internationally?
Pretty hard. I think. I mean, as I said, you're up to getting close to capacity. I think we're very fortunate to have effectively in New Zealand and Jetstar / Qantas, because every Jetstar flight in there has a Qantas flight number as well. Yeah. I mean, we've got the two biggest and best quality airlines in our region flying here, bringing doing the heavy lifting. I know we have Hawaiian as well, and that. But I mean, we've got Air New Zealand and effectively Qantas in here. I think that's pretty good for a destination our size.
And the Hawaiian Airlines, because I know Alaska bought them out recently.
Yeah.
Do you see potentially then moving back or bringing in the LA flight again?
No.
You can remain as it is.
No, because the economics don't work. I mean, you can't. People in the economy cabin, people are expecting to fly down here and back for $1,200 US. You can fill every seat on a wide body at $1,200 US, and you're going to be losing a truckload of money. You've got to be able to sell those front seats for $10,000, and that somebody doesn't come and spend $10,000 or $15,000 on a business class seat and then get here and stay in the hostel. That doesn't fit.
Well, and I mean, probably the last 3 flights I've flown on Hawaiian, they've been full. And that's a good indication, I guess, that it is working. A lot of the locals probably complain that, are we really going to get people through Hawaii? I mean, are they going to fly there and then on to us?
I think that's harder in my own experience, because we experienced that in the 80s when Hawaiian flew here for 7 or 8 years. And the thing we found then is that Hawaii is a destination, not a hub. And because it's a destination, it's all about inbound into there. So you run into these challenges, which is that flight times off the West Coast are designed to get in there during hotel check-in, check-out time, which doesn't necessarily make it ideal for continuing on to a beyond destination. So, and then you have higher intermediate fares, which is the same reason we need non-stop Australia, because as soon as there's higher intermediate fares across the Tasman between the Australian ports and Auckland, you can't get 3 seats to here. So that's why you need your non-stops, and that's how we've been able to really increase our visitation from Australia. Is those direct flights. I would say, that so far in terms of the government investment program in air services, it's probably the most successful thing that's been done.
Whenever I meet people in the US, especially, and they say where you're from, the Cook Islands, I always have to explain it, which I actually always use Hawaii, and say if you take Hawaii and the equator and you flip it, that's where we are. So then they kind of understand it pretty quickly. But then they also ask how do you get there, and I say through Hawaii. My line that I always tell them is, if you go to Hawaii, you're halfway to paradise.
Right.
Yes. Keep going, you'll get there.
Well, the thing is, the encouraging thing is that we're actually being able to get back into those source markets, Europe and the USA. Hawaiian, I think, is bringing predominantly people from the US. From Tahiti, we're bringing people predominantly from Europe. And that's because they find it natural to get on with Tahiti Nui or Air France in Paris and fly down to Tahiti. And across here. So effectively, we're just sort of like an airport transfer, but bringing a plane in 500 miles. But they're doing the heavy lifting. They're getting them down this far.
Yeah, and I mean, I said I just went to Paris, but I looked at the options, and it was actually cheaper for me to go through Tahiti, up to LA and over to Paris.
Well, we've now got interline e-ticket arrangements with Air Tahiti Nui. We'll be extending that probably to French B and the others as well. And once these things take time to get them established, to get them to work, to get the booking platforms to connect everything up, because, for example, we're on Sabre, Air Tahiti Nui and Amadeus. So you say, oh, great, we've got an IET agreement. Can we now interline? They say, first booking we can get with our IT team is in November, and at that point we'll raise a docket and they'll do it then. So it just takes forever. Takes time. Yeah. So the same thing with 3 check-in, which we are aiming at, so that ultimately over Tahiti, you should be able to go and connect within 2 hours to a US bound flight.
Right.
And you should be able to check through, which is where we want to be, but it's still going to take some time and development to get to that stage.
Everyone seems to think these things are easy, but as you said,
No, they're incredibly complex. But once you've got them there, it opens. I mean, we're already seeing now through our distribution through Sabre, we're actually seeing the results of that already. And the fact that the business we're getting on those Tahiti flights is not from a single source; they're from actually multiple sources. It's really good.
Ewan, you've had a fantastic journey, and what an amazing accomplishment for you and your family with your night ship. So, again, congratulations, and thank you for joining us on SmartTalk.
Thanks a lot, Brett. Thank you.
Cheers.